Hi, I'm Dr. Mike Headlee, owner of Explore Chiropractic in downtown Bemidji, and I am presenting you the educational webinar, The Big Six and Adrenal Fatigue. What are the Big Six? Well, the Big Six are fatigue, weight loss resistance, anxiety and depression, GI issues such as gas, bloating, indigestion, constipation, diarrhea, leaky gut, female hormonal issues such as PMS, premenstrual migraines, polycystic ovary syndrome, infertility, low sex drive, and detox issues. I've been a chiropractor for over 20 years, and I started off as kind of a sickly kid. I'm 6'6" and big and strong and pretty healthy now. I haven't been on medication in over 20 years. However, I started off with tonsillitis and strep throat every 3 months, taking boatloads of amoxicillin, had carbon monoxide poisoning, stepped on rusty nails and had a lot of tetanus shots. I slipped and fell off a ladder 16 feet and landed on my tailbone, broke a lower vertebra in my back, had a mountain bike injury, broke a vertebra in my lower neck, had multiple concussions, fell off a roof, had sports injuries, had carbon monoxide poisoning, and then I also had just numerous physical, chemical, emotional stresses that made my body not so healthy. Got in some bad nutritional habits, and so I get into chiropractic college and learned on the very first day what Doctor of Chiropractic means. It means Doctor of Cause. And so I'm going to talk to you about the cause of the Big Six and adrenal fatigue and adrenal exhaustion and some of those symptoms that come with it. And so it's really exciting to really get to the cause of the problem. So I think you can classify all illnesses and disease with one word. I think there's one disease in the world, and it's called stress. It comes in 4 flavors: physical, chemical, emotional, and electromagnetic. Physically, people are overworked, overstressed, don't get enough sleep. Chemically, people are toxic, they're deficient, overweight, too much sugar, too much gluten, and just way too much stress chemically. Emotionally, some of the bigger ones that cause the Big Six and adrenal fatigue emotionally can be loss of a loved one, deaths in families, divorces, change in jobs, change in locations, having multiple children. And some electromagnetic stresses can be from all of the Wi-Fi devices to cell phone towers to stray voltage. We're getting more plugged in, and people have multiple devices, and they aren't grounded properly, and it does affect our nervous system and our cells. All right, so to introduce the stress hormones, we're going to talk a lot about the stress hormones. We're going to talk about causes of imbalances, the stress response. We're going to talk about adrenal fatigue, our clinic model, diet, including testing, and lifestyle changes. And then I'll give you an email and a phone number that you can call or email if you have any questions concerning this. What are symptoms of hormonal imbalance? Well, there's many. There's many symptoms, and you can read the list here and you can look at this, but there's a lot. And sometimes there's one thing. People just wake up at night and they can't get back to sleep, and or they just crash after lunch, even though they eat a really healthy lunch, and they just have no energy, and they're drinking coffee and pop or energy drinks, and they're falling asleep at their desk. There's a ton of symptoms, but sometimes you only have 1 or 2. The foundation for our health, the 3 body systems, we're going to be talking about the hormonal system. Our hormonal system, the adrenal and the sex hormones. The adrenal glands are located above our kidneys. They're 2 little glands, and what they look like is not a lot compared to pancreas and liver and heart and lungs and kidneys. However, they're very I think they're very much overlooked in the health scheme of things. So our adrenal glands, located above the kidneys, produce steroid hormones, DHEA and cortisol. And what most people don't realize is cortisol is our measure of energy, and it produces adrenaline, and it's required to live. If we don't have it, there's a disease called Cushing's. JFK was diagnosed with Cushing's. He had to take a medication every day of his life because his body did not produce cortisol. So our hormonal system is really, really critical. But so is our GI system and our detoxification system, and we're going to talk about how those are interrelated. So our adrenal glands, they produce DHEA and cortisol. They regulate our stress response. So if we're getting chased by a dog, or if we're in traffic, or we're fighting with our spouse, our adrenal glands produce something called cortisol. And it helps us deal with stress, gives us energy in times of crisis and stress. It must exist in a ratio or our body suffers. You get fatigue and blood sugar imbalances, but under continued stress, this hormone levels begin to drop and leading to burnout. So it's kind of like being diabetic. If you know someone who's a type 2 diabetic and they aren't managing their blood sugar, what happens? Your blood sugar continues to stay elevated and continues to rise. Our pancreas can't create enough insulin to store all of the extra blood sugar into our fat cells, and so the cells literally burn out and you become type 2 diabetic. What do you need? Well, you need insulin, and you need, whether it's in a shot or a pill or a pump, because it literally turned the cells off, and the pancreas is literally getting to be burnt out because the insulin isn't working. Well, if we're under constant stress, our body's built for stress. We can handle stress, but short bursts of stress. We shouldn't just be stressed out of our mind 24/7. So if we're in a job we just truly do not like and we get just nauseous when we show up at work, that's going to just stress out our cortisol levels. If we're eating Big Macs and cheeseburgers and energy drinks and really high allergenic foods, that's going to stress out our system. If we're physically over-exercising and overworking, or if we're sitting in front of too many computers and we've got iPhones and iPads and all these other devices connected to us, that's going to continually stress out our system, and our body will eventually burn out. Our adrenal glands work just like the sun and the moon. On this chart, in the middle of the picture, it says 6 a.m. So at 6 a.m. on average, 5 to 6 or 7 a.m., the sun is rising. Well, guess what? That's our highest level of cortisol. At 12 p.m., our cortisol starts to drop. It's maybe 8 or 10 levels or units of cortisol. The adrenals kick out around 6 p.m., 7 or 8 units of cortisol. And 10 at night, it should only be 2 units of cortisol. And if we have that out of balance, our body's not going to function optimally. Excuse me. So what's the functions of cortisol? It promotes burning of body fat. Raise your hand if you want all of these. Well, there's one of them I don't want. Well, promotes burning of body fat. Well, I want that. Maintains mood and emotional stability. Well, I want that. Abnormal levels cause depression. Well, I don't want that. It directs ovarian hormones. Well, technically I don't want that. I don't have any ovaries. Counters inflammation and allergies. Well, I want that. Maintains resistance to stress. Well, I want that. I want my cortisol to be normal. I want it to be high in the morning and slowly decline throughout the day and be low at night so then I can fall asleep. And there's a test that we're going to talk about that measures it at those 4 times a day. In the morning, at noon, in the afternoon, in the evening. So we can determine if the cortisol level produced by the adrenal glands is functioning optimally. What are causes of hormonal imbalance? Well, we said there's 4 major stresses, of 4 flavors of stress called physical, chemical, emotional stress. Well, the physical and emotional stresses, dietary stresses, pain and hidden inflammation, that really wreaks havoc. So what are dietary stresses? A lot of people are eating way too much sugar, way too much gluten, way too much food in general. Pain and hidden inflammation. I'm a chiropractor. I look for posture abnormalities, subluxations, nerve stress, nerve interference, tight muscles. That's a cause of adrenal stress. Dietary stressors. Wow. The big 3 food sensitivities are gluten, soy, and dairy. I could throw in sugar. I mean, we just live in a sugar society. But you can be toxic and deficient in a lot of different things too. How we react to stress. Well, what we eat, how we digest, how we assimilate, how we eliminate, what we do, how we breathe, what we think, what we inherit. There's a lot of things to determine how we react to stress. It's not all genetic. It's not all lifestyle. It's not all what we eat. It's a combination of a lot of those things. So what if we don't react to stress properly? What if like someone cuts us off on the way to work and we just get stressed and we get angry, and then all of a sudden we just go, I'm going to just go have a jelly donut and some chocolate ice cream for lunch because I'm just stressed and I deserve it and it'll relax me. We don't breathe deep, we aren't thinking positive, and all of a sudden our boss says we got to stay late for work, we're overworked, that stresses out our family, we don't get to work out, then we go home and sit in front of the TV and crack open a few beers and watch some TV till too late, then we can't fall asleep, we're tired. There's a million ways we react to stress, but it all results in inflammation of our body and decreased cortisol function from our adrenal glands. Conditions influenced by stress. Name one in the world that isn't influenced by stress, and then I'll listen. But glucocorticoid or cortisol receptors are found in almost every cell in the body, so cortisol controls our whole body. There's major pathways of steroid hormone synthesis. Here's what's interesting. Here you'll see the biochemistry representation of what is happening. This is what's happening inside your body right now. And any doctor who understands these charts can fix hormone problems pretty easily. This is just basic biochemistry. But most doctors haven't remembered this. They learned it at school and forgot. Well, I didn't forget, and I relearned it, and I own it, and I've mastered this. So on the top of the chart, it talks about low density lipoproteins in our blood circulation, gets converted to cholesterol, and then it converts into something called pregnenolone. Pregnenolone makes progesterone and DHEA. DHEA gets converted into testosterone and estrogen. Pretty important hormones for males and females. But also, pregnenolone produces progesterone, which produces cortisol, and then also aldosterone. Very, very important. This is basic in any medical doctor, chiropractor, nutritionist education. So pregnenolone steal, what happens is, the key parts that everyone's forgetting is that when you're under stress, pregnenolone that should be going to progesterone goes into the stress hormone cortisol. So every time you make a molecule of cortisol, which is one of our major stress hormones, it has a direct impact on your estrogen and progesterone levels. That's another way of saying that the daily rhythm of cortisol production influences the monthly cycle. And if you run the stress long enough and your cortisol levels go up and up and up and up and up, it starts to affect your progesterone. And what happens typically is the progesterone drops. You get an imbalance between estrogen and progesterone, testosterone, causing estrogen dominance, and symptoms occur. You just need enough pregnenolone to produce progesterone and cortisol. It's simple biochemistry if you really understand it. So what happens if we get cortisol in excess? Well, initially, if you're under too much stress, you get cortisol production, and we don't want too much cortisol production. So it promotes bone loss, causes fat accumulation around the midsection. Who wants that? Diminishes cell use of glucose. Not good. Increases blood sugar levels. Here comes diabetes. Decreases protein synthesis, so we don't build and repair. Increases protein breakdown, muscle wasting. I don't want that. Interferes with healing. Low immune system. Suppresses your immune system. We do not want to have an acute stress response in our body. Stages of adrenal exhaustion. Normally, if we check your cortisol levels 4 times a day, morning, noon, afternoon, and evening, there should be anywhere from 35 to 42 units of cortisol throughout the day. So initially, a person in stage 1 adrenal exhaustion, they're going to have sky-high adrenal. They can have upwards of 70 units of cortisol if you test it 4 times a day. Not good. Why is that? That's like having sky-high insulin throughout the day and every day and every day. Well, eventually, like we said, then you become diabetic. Well, stage 2 happens when our body can't keep up with the stresses. our body just starts to begin to burn out. And so what happens is, on a stage 2, you see cortisol dropping, can be as low as 23. Stage 3, it's anywhere from 20 down to 2 or 3 total cortisol production throughout the day. So when you do a saliva test to test your adrenals, you can determine if you're stage 1, 2, or 3, or occasionally some people are normal. Unfortunately, not that many people are normal in such a high stressed out world we live in today. Adrenal dysfunction. Well, what are, the big ones are fatigue, and we talked about the big 6. Weight loss resistance, anxiety, depression, GI issues, leaky gut, female hormones, detox. But technically there's a lot of other things. People can get indigestion and poor memory, dry skin, food allergies, cravings, insomnia. There's a ton of things that happen when our adrenals aren't producing the amount of cortisol that it should. Stressors, food allergies, and gluten sensitivity. If I could take away 3 things from everyone's diet, I would take away soy, gluten, and dairy, because they're just highly allergenic. So sometimes people have a genetic predisposition for celiac disease and gluten intolerance. Some people just have other malabsorption issues and just don't tolerate certain foods well. There's something called secretory IgA that cortisol produces in our stomach and it's the mucosal barrier of our intestines. Really overlooked. So I asked this to someone today, how can low cortisol levels from your adrenals, if you're overstressed and you're getting burnt out and just can't handle stress, or stress is affecting you more than you want, how can that affect your stomach and digestion and GI issues and leaky gut and anxiety causing those things? Well, the mucous membranes, line our stomach and our GI system. And when we don't make the right amount of cortisol, we don't produce the secretory IgA, or this mucosal barrier. Well, then we get more susceptible to food sensitivities and food intolerances. That opens up the window to us to get yeast and fungus issues. It all allows us to get parasites and bacteria that are very damaging to the body. And then pathogens can enter the body and binding and penetrating to our mucosal membranes because of low cortisol levels. So what happens? Look on this left. This is the normal jejunum. I like to use the analogy of shag carpet. When we have shag carpet, a lot of things can get lost in the shag carpet, but that's the way our intestines absorb nutrients in the intestine. If we are eating allergenic foods and gluten and inflammatory foods, we get the atrophy of this villi of our intestine. So if we're chronically eating bad foods and high inflammatory foods, our shag carpet that's called our villi in our intestine that should protect the mucosal barrier and that should absorb the nutrients from our intestine become like indoor-outdoor carpet. It's like taking a blowtorch to the carpet. It gets flat and sticky and we don't absorb the nutrients, therefore stressing the adrenal glands even further, because pain and inflammation and GI issues can stress the adrenal glands. Stressors and triggers, pain and hidden inflammation. If people are constantly getting injured and having multiple surgeries, having infections, food reactions, parasites, subluxations, poor posture, overwork, can really stress the adrenal glands. Intestinal pathogens, there's tests called a stool sample that you can test for bacteria and parasites and fungal overgrowth or candida and yeast. It's critical to make sure you have a healthy gut that's not stressing your adrenal glands, further depleting your cortisol levels. Here's the typical onset of health problems. 95% of the cases, it's usually precipitated by one of the following events. What are some of the biggest stresses in life? Death and divorce, childbirth, usually after the second or third, overwork. Seriously, I respect people who've had 5, 6, 8, 10 kids. Wow, that's not easy. I have 3 kids myself, and they're great. I'm blessed with 3 wonderful kids. Sometimes it's not easy to juggle all of their day-to-day activities and homework and scheduling sports work, all the things that we have to do. But also, emotional stress, we talked about chemical stress. What if you're just on a roller coaster diet and ups and downs and sports drinks and shakes and McDonald's and just high stress? You're overworked, you just aren't getting enough sleep. There's a lot of ways the stress hormones get increased. And if they stay increased, they literally burn out. We don't make enough cortisol. When we don't make enough cortisol, it affects our immune system. And then we get more susceptibility to food sensitivities. We get GI pathogens and bacteria and fungus and yeast and mold. We develop a leaky gut. When we develop that, toxins leach into our blood system, so our detox system gets overwhelmed. Our liver and lymph and immune system really affects us, therefore just depleting our health, and we just on a roller coaster, sometimes stuck in the medical doctor's office with them say, I don't know what's wrong. I think you got fibromyalgia. I think you got leaky gut. I just don't know what to help you. I don't know what to give you anymore. And people don't understand. Geez, you look pretty healthy, but how come you're so tired? How come you have to run to the bathroom all the time? How come you're so bloaty? How come you got those big rings under your eyes? How come you're always drinking coffee? How come you're sleeping all the time? This is typical onset, 95% of the cases. Less common, 5% of the time. The underlying cause, maybe you're traveling out of the country, you get food poisoning, eat at a bad restaurant or eat at a buffet. A lot of things, undercooked meat, eat too much sushi. That can increase the toxins and affect our detox mechanism, but also the GI infections can increase inflammation. Inflammation depletes our cortisol levels and our hormones. And this causes a lot of problems as well. Even less common is when we can't, we can't tolerate the toxins from work. Sometimes we get mold exposure. Sometimes we're mechanics and exposed to so many chemicals on our hands, and you get cuts. And artists using oil paints, or commercial painters with lead-based paints. And I have a friend who had some issues that used to be a carpet layer, and all the fumes and chemicals from the carpet after years and years and years of doing that cause detox issues that decreases immune response, affecting the GI system and also affecting our adrenals. So our clinical model, we do a stress profile, adrenal stress profile. It's called a 201, where you spit in a test tube 3 milliliters 4 times a day. I've said this earlier, in the morning, at noon, in the afternoon, in the evening, and you send it to the lab. After just a couple days, they send me back a report, and it tells me the levels at those 4 times a day to see what your adrenal rhythm is, to see how much cortisol is being produced. If that's normal, we can do other female hormonal profiles for the big 5 for females, the PMS, premenstrual, migraines, polycystic ovaries, infertility, and low sex drives. We can do a month-long female hormonal panel, the stool samples to check out the GI system, and then also there's a urine test to determine the detox pathways. Well, what else do you have to do to really fix your adrenals? You have to work on stress management. I didn't say stress elimination. The only people that don't have stress are people in the cemetery. So we have to not eliminate stress, but we can eliminate some of the stress, but we have to manage our stress. We have to exercise. I'm not going to tell everyone to be a triathlete and marathon runner, but maybe you need to exercise by going to a yoga class or getting a yoga DVD or doing Pilates or walking, meditating. Diet and supplements. The supplements the adrenals like the most, they absolutely require multivitamins and minerals. Omega-3 fatty acids, fish oils, vitamin C is critical. Very important. Sleep, rest, and recover. If you want to hurt someone the most, make them stay up all night for several days in a row. You have to get your sleep. Cortisol works on a rhythmic cycle, just like the sun and the moon. Well, we need to get our sleep and repair at night, and it's really critical. Posture and structure. Physically, we want to reduce the inflammation and structure of our body, so we want to make sure our posture is improved and our structure. Logical treatment options mean treating the underlying cause, not just symptoms. We need to identify and treat the stress response, identify and treat female hormone imbalances if there's an issue there. We give you an individualized treatment based on personal profile, current symptoms, and based on current research. It's not the same program for everybody. You know why? Because we did a functional adrenal test, and if you have high or normal if you have normal cortisol in the morning, why would you ever take a supplement to improve your cortisol? It's normal. But if it's the lowest it can possibly be at noon, we better give you something to raise it up then. And if it's too high at night, we want to lower that down so you can sleep properly. So everyone is different because everyone's labs come out slightly different based on your individual lifestyle. Types of tests, we talked about the saliva tests, urine tests for detox pathways, and the stool samples for the parasites and bacteria, yeast, fungus, mold. The clinical process, well, we do initial consultation, and someone asked me that during the last class. Well, why would you do a consultation? Well, to see if you even qualify for the program. I want to see when do you think the symptoms started. You know, if you're fatigued or you have GI problems, female hormonal issues, you have some weight loss resistance, you have some detox issues. When did the problem start? And then also, what was going on at the time? Did you have some major stresses going on in or around that time? So you can purchase a test. The tests are $130, and then I send them to a lab, and I get them back within a few days, and then I get the labs back, and then we sit down and do a report of findings. And I interpret them, and then I design a treatment protocol, and we do a follow-up consult to determine the diet, the exercise, the stress management program, and your sleeping cycle that will help your body restore itself to its normal function as fast as possible. Correcting adrenal stress, well, you must correct the DHE and cortisol ratio. We give you targeted vitamin and minerals. It's vitamins and minerals that are critical, and the healing diet, which is with no soy, dairy, or wheat. It's a paleo diet. It's very healthy, very easy to follow, and you'll just notice significant improvements. Backing up, talking about the healing diet. I was going to mention this earlier. You know, here's one of the biggies with the GI problems and what stresses out society. So how do you fatten cattle up when they go to market? Most people will say, well, you give them two things. You give them grains and hormones. You want to fatten a person up? We'll give them muffins or refined foods, grains, and the increased hormonal levels. So that's what that's what we're doing today. We're pushing into the feedlot, and we aren't backing up fast enough, so we're getting overweight, and we're having problems with our hormones. So the healing diet is a diet high in protein. It's not Atkins whatsoever, but it's it's just healthy protein. It's normal protein. It's not like, oh my gosh, I have to eat 3 steaks every day and 6 hamburgers and 6 chicken breasts. No, it's not crazy high. It's just, you know, it's normal amount for your body type. And we eliminate the food allergies and put them on food rotation diet and gluten and dairy and soy free. It has glycemically balanced meals, 3 meals and 2 snacks. We don't skip meals, and it's very, you know, it takes some planning. And if you're used to eating fast food all the time and eating on the run and eating chips and pop and candy, well, we got to work on those things. There's dietary the guidelines that will email you, and you do questionnaires, and we'll work on those things. Healing diet guidelines, you got to eliminate gluten, soy, pasteurized dairy. I think dairy is fine if it's raw, has enzymes and probiotics. You got to eliminate the sugar and hydrogenated oils, alcohol, coffee, soda, over-the-counter prescription stuff, organic proteins, vegetables, fruits, gluten-free grains such as amaranth, buckwheat, rice. Eat some beans and potatoes, sweet potatoes, yams. Eat some butter if it's organic, some coconut, olive, flax, sesame oil. You got to avoid canola oil. Gluten-free diet. Gosh, the average person loses 10 pounds in a month if they're off gluten. There's 2 books that I highly recommend. They're life-changing. It's called Wheat Belly. You can get it on Amazon. Very interesting book. Very scientific book. Easy and a fun read. The next book that's really important to read is something called Grain Brain. The Wheat Belly book is by a cardiologist, and he talks about how he healed up a lot of his heart patients, getting them off gluten. The next book, Grain Brain, is by a neurosurgeon who healed up a lot of his neurological cases, from MS to Parkinson's to Alzheimer's to dementia, by getting them off gluten and grains and sugar. It's very, very important that you read those books. They're life-changing. Dairy-free diet, geez, there's a lot of reasons dairy isn't good. And if you have any reasons and questions, I'll give you the email, or you can call my office and I'll go through why dairy isn't on the top of the list. Why gluten and dairy free? Well, many patients are gluten and or lactose intolerant and have allergies to grains or milk. It forces patients to eat less allergenic foods. It reduces inflammation and cycle of intestinal tissue damage. If you read Wheat Belly and Grain Brain, you'll realize that gluten has something in it called gliadin, and it creates a chemical reaction and creates intestinal damage to the villi, and it's really important that you stay off gluten. And so it reverses the blowtorch gut lining effect and stimulates building into the body. It gives our body a chance to heal by getting off the allergenic foods. Lifestyle, exercise, stress relief, meditation, yoga, proper sleep, positive outlook, healthy relationships. Sometimes if you just heal a relationship, sometimes if you just call up a loved one and family member or friend and just reconnect, sometimes just heal, just forgive. And if you need some help, there's some really good counselors out there. There's some life coaches. There's some psychologists. There's some really good people to help us with our lifestyle and our emotional stresses. There's really good help in this world. If you have any questions, call 218-333-8811. The email is explorechiropractic@gmail.com. So give me a call. If you have any questions, you want to order a test, you want to set up a 30-minute consult, you can call Angie, 333-8811, because adrenal exhaustion and adrenal testing is not done in the medical doctor. They do not do functional tests. And the biggest question I get, why didn't I know about this? Why don't I hear about this from my medical doctor? I tell them I'm fatigued and achy and sore, kind of got anxiety, depression, can't lose weight. They just give me antidepressants. Well, I'm not completely depressed. I just want to get energy and exercise and feel good. And I just can't get out of bed, and I crave sugars, and my hormones cycle is off. I feel bloated and get diarrhea or constipation. How come I can't get relief? Well, the short answer is because it's not a medical fix. Medical doctors' tools are drugs and surgery. Well, I can't recommend either one of those unless it's through a referral and go see a medical doctor, but I can't recommend drugs and surgery. I can recommend natural supportive care with chiropractic care to your body. And so we can functionally test your adrenal glands and see how you're responding to stress. And then we can design an individual program to allow your body to heal itself. And it's really exciting to have sustained energy throughout the day and to sleep like you're in a coma and wake up fully recharged and ready to get going for the day. And if anyone knows me, I'm not the healthiest person on the planet. I'm not like, ripped and sculpted, but I'm not sickly and fat and overweight either. I get up at 5 a.m., get up and go downstairs in my basement and exercise every day and do reading and write in my journals. And I really plan my day. And I don't start work till 8, so I'm up 3 hours before I start work. Because I have high energy. I eat a healthy breakfast, a healthy lunch, sometimes a snack, depending on, what kind of energy I need or how big the meals are. If I eat a small meal, I might have a snack in between meals, healthy snack. I make my own energy bars made from whole ingredients and have a really good apple, Macintosh apple or something, and have some trail mix sometimes, whatever it takes just to have a little snack and keep my blood sugar even and my energy up. And I drink lots of water and I get plenty of sleep. I have good relationships. I have fun every day helping people. And it's really exciting because I was a stage 3 adrenal exhausted person. I worked 6 days a week for 20 years and I just pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed and never took breaks. But now I'm restored fully, 100%, and it's so exciting to have all my tissues and systems and organs and spine and nervous system functioning optimally. So if you want that and you have questions or concerns, give me a call, 218-333-8811. Have a wonderful day.